First Assembly. This is Pastor Wes, and I want to welcome you to Wednesday Word. Hey, so good to be with you, man, and I want to thank you for joining. And man, it seems like for a long time we were talking about living the life, just the practical application of the scripture and faith and our relationship with God applied to our lives in a daily way. And we kind of wrapped that up last time that we were together, and it's kind of like saying goodbye to an old friend. But we're going to be starting something new. And there was a book I read many years ago written by Andy Stanley called Enemies of the Heart. And it was such a great conversation, and I'm not really here to push, a person. I am here to say that the book was sensational, and it touched on some really good things that we might benefit from. And so we're going to take a couple of weeks and talk about what are the enemies of our hearts. Now, our physical hearts are not really what we are going to be talking about, although we know that we know that the heart is a muscle that pumps blood through your body and kind of keeps us functioning and keeps us going. If it ever gets off rhythm, that's a problem. If it ever stops, that's a problem. And it became so much more real to me when I was 36 years old and had a heart attack, how the heart impacts everything that you do. And so now my doctors are always interested in seeing how's your heart doing? What's its rhythm like? What are your symptoms? Have you had any issues? They're always running tests and making sure they bring me in and do the stress test. And I think last time I went in, they put me on the treadmill, and I kid you not, the woman that was working with me, her name was Holga. I kid you not. And if you hear the word Holga and get a picture in your mind of what a Holga would look like, you're probably right. And she just stood there, and I'm like, ma'am, how much longer do I need to do this? And she would just make it go faster. I mean, she truly encompassed the spirit of a Holga, and it's wild. But they put me on the treadmill and they run and they watch how my heart reacts to it and responds to it. They want to see it stressed. They want to see it in a resting state. They want to know how long does it take me to get from a elevated heart rate to a resting state. And so they hook me up to all these machines and they do all this stuff, and they want to see how it functions, where it's flexible, where it's not flexible, to kind of determine how much damage was done in my heart attack. And it was an amazing thing, and your heart is an amazing thing. And so we're going to take a couple of weeks and really look at what are the enemies of your heart. And again, I'm not talking about physical stuff, but I want to talk about the other heart. I want to talk about the heart that poets write about. I want to talk about the heart that preachers preach about. I want to talk about the heart that got broken when good old what's-her-name said she just wanted to be friends. The heart that swells with pride when your kids do something good, and the heart that at the same time can be pretty mean sometimes. Their heart at the same time that can carry anger and bitterness. The heart that can surprise you sometimes with what it thinks and what it feels. Life can be hard on the heart if you don't care for it, if you don't take care of it. And the world is full of a lot of outside influences that have the power to disrupt the flow of our hearts. All right. And the thing is this, the struggle, what makes this hard is that most of them aren't drastic. Most of them aren't big things. Many of the times it's subtle things, but it has an impact. And our hearts over time can become less sensitive. They can become a little numb to things. Our hearts over time can become hardened towards certain things or attitudes or people or situations. We have bad experiences, we have a heartache, we deal with disappointments in life, and all of these things can kind of cause us to step back, and as a means of protecting ourselves, we build walls around our lives and kind of keep people at arm's distance. And I'd shared a little bit about this on Sunday about, I think one of the struggles is so many of us long for community. We long to belong, and yet we're fearful of vulnerability. And so while I want to have community, we work so hard to keep people at a distance. And there's a work for God to do in that. And so many times there are reasons. Many times there are reasons why we build walls. There are reasons why our hearts are the way they are and why we did it. And it's often understandable, but there is a hard reality that it does affect the way our heart works. There are certain medicines that you may take that affect you. You take this medicine and it makes you sleepy. You take this medicine and it kind of makes your heart race. I had a medicine I took one time. I just felt like it made my heart beat faster. And so we have these things around us. Medicines, though, will work their way out of your body. One of the testings that they did for me after my heart attack was they said, hey, we're going to stress your heart. And they didn't want to put me on the treadmill, so they gave me a shot of something that was going to stress my heart and make it feel like it was working out or having a heart attack so that they could watch it. And, I don't know. When you don't know anything, you don't know anything. And I'm like, okay, we're good. And man, they gave me that shot and I could feel it going up my arm into my chest. And I looked at the nurse at one point and said, this is stupid. This is dumb. Like, why would anyone want to do this? But thankfully, as soon as they got the results that they needed, they injected a new medicine that counteracted the one that made my heart race. And I was so thankful for that. And so, some medicine, some things, you can counteract. Some things, you take a medicine that makes you drowsy, but you sleep it off and it works its way out of your body. But sadly enough, there are some life issues. There are some things that we sometimes deal with that linger. And they can linger and they can last a lifetime in our spirits if we let them. And if left alone, what we tend to do is to adapt. We tend to normalize these things and we begin to see it as part of ourselves, like it's just the way that I am, but it wasn't the way we always were. And this is kind of like a big thing, think about people who are close to you, friends or family or spouses that kind of go, why are you so angry? You didn't used to be so angry. Why are you so jealous? You didn't used to be so jealous. And we sometimes experience these things, because the reality is there was a time you were happier. There's a time you weren't as fearful. You used to laugh more. Now you don't laugh as much. And so something has changed. And where does that start? Where does that come from? You weren't always this way. And the truth is, most of the time, it's the people that were the closest to us that realize that about us. And so I want you to think about this question because it isn't a how's your family? It isn't a how's your career? How's your finances? How you doing? It's how are things with your heart? Like, how are things going on inside of you? Because we don't always stop and think about it because there's lots of things to do, right? We got jobs to do, meals to cook, we got bills to pay, we got schedules to keep. Everybody's calendar is probably more full than it needs to be. So all of us stay pretty hopping and busy. And if you work and are able to keep all of the plates, spinning for the day, at the end of the day, if someone says, hey, how are things? How's life? And you would say, good, because I kept everything moving that I needed to keep moving, and we can have a smile on our face. But those are different questions. How's your heart? And I was thinking on the way to work this morning that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all thrown into the fiery furnace. They trusted the Lord for whatever, the outcome was going to be. And they had faith. And you read it and there's some faith that they just knew that they knew that God was going to save them. And sometimes you can read it and you see where they're like, hey, we know God can, but even if we die in this, we're not turning our back on God. And I just look at that and say, what a powerful story. But in Daniel 3:27, it says this. Then the high officers, officials, governors, advisors crowded around him and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothes were not scorched. They didn't even smell like smoke. And the word tells us that they came out and they didn't smell like smoke, that nothing was singed, that they didn't even look like they had been through what they had been through, and they didn't act like they had been through what they had been through. And in that we see the faithfulness of God, and that God will get us through fiery times, and that God is in the fire with us. You don't read stories about them for the rest of their lives. They were afraid of open flame. We don't read those things. They went through something amazing and came out of it untouched by it. And I think that's an incredible thing. And you may have seen people like this in your life that have gone through something challenging, gone through something hard, and they come out of it. And it's like the situation and the pain and the battle and the struggle didn't change them in a negative way. And they come out of these things. And it's like, yeah, we've been through the fire, but we weren't burned. And then I can probably look at people and see times that they went through stuff, faced some things, and they look like they've been through some stuff. They smelled like they've been through some stuff. They acted like they've been through some stuff. And so when I think of these two different camps, one that go through things and yet the fire doesn't burn us or singe us, and God is with us. And when I go through stuff and I'm not the same, and it's made me question, and it made me, hold people away. It's made me angry. Was God less God? Was God less faithful? Was he not with them? And if so, if God is God and God is faithful, then God is with us in the flame. So why then do some people look like they've been through what they've been through and smell like what they've been through, right? Like, what are the differences? Is one a lack of maturity, but the faithfulness of God? Is the other a maturity in God and his faithfulness? And so even thinking about your life, I think we all go through things. I think in those things we learn and we grow and we can become. But I also know that there are times we go through things that impact our lives that are not for good. And we can tend to carry that for years and years. You get really hurt, and so we become untrusting of people. We go through want. And all of a sudden, stuff and material becomes very important to us, and having and obtaining. And there can be things that really impact our lives. And so I just want to ask you tonight, how's your heart? Not your family, not your career, not your financing, not your job, how's your heart? Because we don't always look at that, because I don't know if we were really ever taught to look at that. I think, growing up, most of us were taught how to behave. And in that and through that is like, blessing and discipline. It's like when you act right, you're treated a certain way. And when you didn't act right, you were handled a different way. And we kind of learn which way we want to do it. That there are expectations of the way we expect people to act, regardless of what's going on in their heart. And not to sound mean or in any way off-putting, but like if someone's being rude or mean to you and then they go, "I'm sorry, I'm just tired." Yeah, so what? Just because you're tired isn't a reason or an excuse to be rude or demeaning or mean. Kind of like I expect better out of people than that. And so it's just not a rude, reason, And so we're taught to behave. That if you behave correctly, good things happen. And if you misbehave, bad things happen. And so is it a negative response to things that often teaches us what to do? I learned how to not touch a hot stove because I touched a hot stove. And sometimes we have negative experiences and we go through things and we feel it and we embrace it and it costs us something. And we go, man, I don't ever want to do that again. So I'm not going to do that again. And, I grew up in the day we got spankings. And, if I did something wrong, I got a whooping. And it was kind of like, okay, if I don't want this, then I shouldn't do that. Life was a lot simpler back then, and it's really an amazing thing. And so a lot of us grew up, though, learning more how to modify our behavior to avoid pain, and then learning what is the right attitude and condition of my heart and what it should be. And that doesn't stop in our youthfulness. That doesn't stop as a child. That's something we carry on into our adulthood. Years ago, my wife is terribly afraid of snakes. And one night we'd come home from church on a Wednesday night, and I was in the van, and we pulled up in front of the house, and we had these two little poles in front of our house. There was like a little porch, And there was a little bird nest up on there with eggs. And as we pulled in, my wife said, "What is that?" And I looked, and it looked like something was trying to crawl up the post to get to the bird nest. And I'm like, "Oh, it's a shadow, it's a shadow, it's nothing," because, I just know her fear. And when I walked over to it, so let me go check, I walked over, there was about a 4-foot black snake. And I'm like, oh gosh, now we have to burn down the house. And so I got a shovel and I grabbed the snake by the tail and I pulled it off the post and I killed it. And it was getting ready to take it and kind of just throw it off in the woods. And I turned around and there's the van and there's my wife's facing the, the windshield, and my 2 daughters were in the windshield watching. And I just took the snake and I kind of just threw it up in the air. And, by chance, the snake lands right on the windshield of the van, inches from their face. And, from the house to the van, I hear screams and yelling. My wife, who was sitting in the front seat, somehow in one motion jumped from the front seat over the second seat into the third row seating. All I saw was feet disappear into the darkness. And I thought it was hysterical. I thought it was funny. Since then, I have learned and I have modified my behavior. And I'll leave that at that. It's amazing because pain or embarrassment or something will focus us on our behavior. What did I do and what do I need to learn to not do that again, right? And so in doing this, we become better at monitoring our behavior than we do watching the condition of our hearts. Right? Good behavior can be rewarding, like flowers, good, throwing snakes, bad. All right? You learn some things as you live through life. And as a pastor, I could even say as a follower of Christ, that we've learned to modify our language. We've learned to how I talk at church and how I act at church and what we do with our hands during worship, and when do I clap and when do I lift them. We learn how to do things so as not to damage our witness. And even, I would say that even applies to our work, like even wherever you work, no matter your job, there are certain things you just can't do. Not because you don't want to, but because there's a consequence. If there's somebody at work that's getting on your nerves, you might want to give them a piece of your mind, but if I do, I'm probably going to have an issue with HR and it's not worth it. And so let me just figure out how I can get along. There are ramifications from the way that come from how I handle things, right? And all of this kind of pretending and whatnot can be problematic because it allows us to ignore the true condition of our hearts, right? And as long as I say the right thing and do the right thing, I must be okay. And I don't know if that's always the truth. You're saying the right thing, you're doing the right thing. But is your heart really okay, right? And this sounds okay. This sounds like it makes sense. But what can happen is that our public face can be very distant from what's going on inside of our hearts and inside of our spirits. And so eventually the real you is going to seep out. Eventually what's in your heart is going to come out of your mouth, and you'll be carried out with your hands and walked out with your feet. And so unresolved issues in your heart work their way into your actions. They work their way into your character, and they're going to be expressed in relationships. And if it isn't addressed, whatever is in our heart will become harder and harder to manage with just words and behavior, right? And so, how's your heart, right? How is that thing inside of you that holds the life that we are living? Because things can start to slip. Like I've always been able to control my tongue, but recently, there's been a tone in your voice. I don't know if you've ever had someone say, why you say it like that? Like it's the same thing I've said before, but this is different. It sounds different. It feels different. Recently there have been some responses that may have surprised you, that things came out of your mind. Whoa, where did that come from? That's not me. I don't know where that came from. Well, that came from inside of you. There's no one else can own that response but you. It's yours. And so cardiologists will sometimes do a test where they'll take an x-ray of the heart. And I've done this where they'll inject a dye into your vein, and then they kind of watch the dye work its way all the way through as your heart pumps it. And what will happen is if you have a blockage, and that's what they're checking for, they're checking for blockages to see if there is something that's limiting the blood flow and the work of the heart to be carried out. And if they find something, they can install a stent. They'll go in through artery in your leg and go up to it, and they'll put a stent in or take a balloon and they'll do it. And they open up the artery to kind of flow more freely. And it's really interesting to watch the dye work through your body. Like, you don't have to be a doctor to know when there's a blockage, because all of a sudden it's going through and all of a sudden it kind of gets real glowy. And you're like, okay, something stopped it right there. It's pretty obvious. And the crazy thing is, if you have a blockage, that it can have symptoms, back pain, inability to sleep, anxiety, loss of appetite, indigestion, nausea. All of these things are symptoms of a blockage. And the struggle is that all of these things can be treated without treating the real issue. Like treating the symptoms, but it ignores the real thing. Years ago, I had a friend who attended church here, and he had said he had hurt his back at work. And he was just having a lot of pain. And so they put him on pain medicines, and he was just taking the pain medicines. Man, I don't know why, it's just not getting better, and it's not getting better, and muscle relaxers, and the pain just wouldn't go away. And then finally they dug deeper, and what they discovered was that he had cancer. That was causing it. And they were treating the muscles, but not treating the real symptom. And it took his life because the symptoms were being handled and not the real issue. And so all of these symptoms that we deal with in our lives spiritually, but if we don't deal with the deeper thing, because eventually the root problem becomes the real problem. All right. And so all the things that go wrong in our hearts, that go unaddressed, sometimes are because we're trying to control the symptoms, and we end up doing a lot of damage to our lives because we're not really willing to really deal with our hearts and what's going on inside of ourselves. And so over the next couple of weeks, we're going to take these and we're going to break some things down. We're going to put some spiritual dye in our system and let it run its course and see if we can identify some areas of our hearts that God may want to deal with, that God may want to kind of say, hey, listen, let's stop dealing with the symptoms. Let's stop dealing with, oh, I can't keep a good friend, or all of my relationships are selfish, or all my finances. Let's push the symptoms to the side and let's fix the heart of the matter, because the heart affects everything that we do. And the thing is this, it's rarely a one and done thing. It is establishing a habit or a new discipline of being much more aware of what's going on inside of us, and being able to have healthy change to our lives. Ezekiel 36:26 says, and I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will take out your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. See, we need to change, but it changes from the inside out. It's not changing all the external things and hoping that it sinks in. It's internal to grow out of us. So how does that work? Is it doing right things and believing over time it will become part of your nature? And often that's the pattern of failures and victories. You know, hey, I messed up, but I won this time, but then I messed up there and I won this time. And truthfully, that's part of the journey, because I think anytime we're growing, no one gets it perfect all the time, every time. We learn in all things. When we accept Jesus into our heart and we are saved, that there is this beautiful work that He does, that we are saved. Yes, I'm not earning salvation. It is a gift that I receive, but I'm learning to work out in my flesh the things that damage my heart, and I'm welcoming the Spirit of Christ in me that's going to help me be changed and walk the change and continue to grow and to be like Jesus. You know, this act of sanctification, this maturing, is a very real thing, and it's for all of us. And so that's why we can be happy that we're forgiven and yet not always willing to extend forgiveness to everyone, right? Because we're good, but there's work to be done. And so we just want to be faithful to it. We want to continue to walk in it. We can love and be blessed, and yet sometimes struggle when somebody else is blessed. It's like, as long as we're on this side of eternity, there's work for us to do and continue to grow and to continue to be who Christ has created us to be. We are all a work in progress. I said the other day, that God we are building a house by every decision that we make, and all of our houses are fixer-uppers, that we need the Lord to help us. We didn't get where we were overnight, and we're probably not going to get somewhere else overnight. I can get healthier, but I don't get healthy overnight. I get healthier. So it is a process of growth. It is a process of time and of walking these things out. So in all of it, there's things we can do and decisions we can make, but it is a process. And so over the next several weeks, we're going to look at greed. We're going to look at anger. We're going to look at guilt, and we are going to look at jealousy. And I just find that so many of the issues of our lives have roots that go back to one of those four core things, and we're going to walk those things out. So First Assembly, how's your heart? How is your heart tonight? And I want to encourage you to step back from behavior modification and just learning to bite my tongue and say, God, I don't want to just be able to have, the will to not say what I really feel. I want to give you my heart to change and make me like you. First Assembly, I love you and I bless you, and I pray you have a great week. And I hope that this coming Sunday you join us. Man, come in person. Convoy of Hope, one day to feed the world. We're asking everybody to give one day's wage to this ministry. Provides Clean Water Initiative, women empowerment, feeding of orphans. It's just this incredible, amazing ministry, and we would love for you to be a part. If you're not able to join us, you can go online on our website and give online, and let's be a blessing to them. God bless you, and make sure you tell somebody about Jesus.